Hello and welcome to Realms Edge Gaming. In this episode, I thought we could take a look at the Warhammer Fest preview from today that focused on the Age of Sigmar. So it's not an kind of exaggeration where it says we've got some amazing things to show you today. So settle in and get comfortable because there's rather a lot to get through. So this isn't quite the same order that it appeared during the live stream. But let's kick off with the Warhammer community kind of order because they've started off with the Broken Realms. And we were introduced to Kragnos. And we actually learnt a little bit about him as an actual character. So basically what it was that he was imprisoned beneath the mountain. And this was kind of alluded to in the introductory video that we saw about him, about the realms will quake. Basically, he was incredibly destructive, and the forces of order kind of trapped him under the mountain to stop him from destroying everything. He was, battling kind of dragons, and he was basically the ancient god of earthquakes and just caused ruination and destruction wherever he went. And we learn that he's the last survivor of an ancient race. He's massive, towers over all but mega gargants. And basically was just this huge kind of demigod force of destruction, and basically was imprisoned. And apparently Lord Croak had a large part to play in that, which comes as no surprise that he's appearing in the the next Broken Realms installment with Kragnos himself. Apparently a huge juggernaut of destruction. He's got a legendary shield called Tuskbreaker, which is apparently something that he gained through fighting with Gorkamorka and chipping his tooth. He's got a dread mace made from the heart of a mountain, and a realm-splitting might becomes truly cataclysmic. Having hunted the ancient race of drakes nearly to extinction for little more than sport, there's not really too much that can survive his focused rage. And this is why the armies of destruction are so kind of focused upon him and follow him wherever he goes. He can basically be used as an ally in any destruction force. So Ogre-Morg tribes, the Mega Gargants, Uruk War clans, Gloomspite Gits. And he's shaping up to be, a very interesting character indeed, with some definite kind of eyebrow-raising War Scroll kind of features as well, because from what they were talking about, he sounds like he's going to be a real force of nature on the tabletop. And I'm sure that this will be reflected in the points for him too. So one of the things that they were talking about, which I don't think they've written in the article, was about how he's particularly good at smashing through gates. And it kind of led on to the talk about Excelsis. Another thing that kind of caught my attention was when he was saying about how, even though he's not a god as such, he's a demigod, he can kind of go toe-to-toe with the likes of Be'lakor, Teclis, Archaon, they even mentioned, a Malarian. It just sounded a bit strange that people are still kind of talking about Malarian when that's kind of not even represented on the tabletop. We hear about him in discussions, he comes up on the storyline, for example in Book 1 Marathi, but we don't really see or hear anything of him, and he's definitely a model that I would love to see represented on the tabletop. But let's have a look. So we've got here, there's a little effigy there on the base that you can see, and apparently these are kind of cropping up around the mortal realms as kind of destruction factions and races try to kind of either summon him or kind of gain his favour or attention. So a really interesting looking model, very imposing. I think this one looks great. I'll be honest, the as I did in my previous video about Kragnos himself, he isn't quite what I thought he'd be, but you know what, I'm not disappointed. And it sounds interesting that, it says about his kind of people are missing. Well, maybe later on in the storyline they will put in an appearance. It will be interesting to see what happens with that. So, some of the rules. Icon of Destruction. Kragnos is revered and held in awe by all warriors that belong to the Grand Alliance of Destruction. So not only can we field him on the tabletop, I'm talking about myself there as a Gloomspite Gits player, you can add 1 to the bravery characteristics of friendly destruction units that are wholly within 12 inches of the model. We spoke about Tuskbreaker being earned by chipping Gorkamorka's tooth. And we learn here that basically what you can do is it makes Kragnos impervious to even the most potent magical hexes and bolts. So each time the model is affected by a spell or an endless spell ability, you can roll 3 dice. If the roll is greater than the casting value of the spell or endless spell, ignore the effects of that spell or endless spell on this model. And there's a designer's note that you use the casting value on the spell or endless spell's war scroll, not the casting roll for the spell or endless spell. So that's going to make it even more realistically that you will be able to kind of nullify the effects for Kragnos. Some of the things that didn't appear here that they spoke about during the the kind of preview show was that Kragnos, I think, has got something along the lines of, it was either 15 or 18 wounds. It was a huge amount, and that on the charge he's particularly kind of deadly, as you would think about, someone who's kind of the embodiment of earthquakes as well. Apparently he can pump out a huge amount of mortal wounds even before he starts swinging his weapon. So we've got Broken Realms Kragnos, which will be rounding out our series with a bang, apparently. I imagine, they did say about this, there was an interview at the end where they were saying that, it will time with Excelsis. We're going to get kind of rules for Gloomspite. We're going to get these cities of Sigmar for the city of Excelsis. I think it also mentioned something that I was really pleased to hear about, updated war scroll for Alariel, someone who's, definitely kind of in need of, some attention, just based upon, the current war scroll. It's definitely something that could do with a bit of a focus and a bit of love there. So that is Broken Realms Kragnos. It's going to be a good one, I'm sure. And then there's just a bit of a recap there of the models that we've seen. So we've got the Vendensts, we've got Lord Croak, who's going to put in an appearance in this Broken Realms. We've got the new Slaneshi Demons, and we've got the Warsong Revenants too. So it says, just to recap here, we've seen the new models, and there's not too long to wait apparently before the release of Kragnos, and all of those kind of models will get their updated rules in this book as well. So now for some news from Shaiish, and this is kind of what threw me off with the article, because on the actual preview show they started off with the Soulblight as opposed to the Broken Realms Kragnos. But anyway, we get to see the whole kind of plethora of models that are being brought out for the Soulblight, and that there's a fair few new ones. Loka Vai, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully I am, has kind of been doing the rounds at the moment on the internet, because on the current issue of White Dwarf it said about the Mother of Nightmares. There was a little kind of grainy image of her, and people weren't sure as to whether it was a kit bash or not. There was lots of talk about the sword arm being very kind of reminiscent of Sigvald, and people thought it might be a kit bash for one of the, Tales of the Four Armies or whatever it might be. But anyway, Lauka Vai, the Mother of Nightmares, it says here about the Avengori dynasty, seek to slake their thirst on the very largest and strongest prey. It mentions about having a kind of twisted body, and she makes the perfect centerpiece for the collection, and obviously it's going to be great to see how people paint her up. Loads of different textures on there. I have to be honest, this high quality resolution image really kind of does show it off in, I think, a better light than the kind of the image in the White Dwarf article. She looks really imposing actually, and I'm really interested to see how people go about this. As I said, kind of lots of textures. I like the actual kind of dynamicism of the pose there as well, and how you've got the kind of tail snaking around the crumbling ruin there as well. Some really interesting kind of coloration. The body, I was just looking at it now, kind of reminds me of either, like a Morgul with that kind of pale, kind of slimy looking skin, or like the coloration on the Cabridus? I guess from Harker on now. She kind of does almost look almost a bit dark elven almost, you know, from the Marathis and the Corsairs. It'd be a really cool conversion, you know, part of this as well. But again, that's a cool looking model. I do like it. And it has made me want to collect Soulblight as well to add to the collection. So we've got Luca Vi, some close-ups there. Apparently it's a hideous amalgamation of bat, drake and humanoid body. And then we've got a Vengorian Lord here in a slightly different pose. I do also like this one, so it's cool. Be interesting to see how their rules are represented on the tabletop and what kind of forces you can field, you know, respectively. Apparently this embodies the true nature of all Soulblight vampires. Transformed lords revel in self-loathing, powerful warriors and wizards, fighting at the head of Soulblight Gravelords army for every dynasty. And then we learn about another dynasty here, which we've heard of before, the Verkos dynasty, which is Radikar from Cursed City, which I'm going to not mention on this channel. We've got Radikar the Wolf's demise from Cursed City has been greatly exaggerated. He's now known as the Beast, and he's got a kind of, I guess, updated model to show his kind of current form. What I found interesting about the kind of all of these Soulblight was that none of them were mentioned as being a Mortarch. So it doesn't seem as though any of these models are kind of being taken on by Nagash as a Mortarch. I have done a video previously about, you know, what I would like to see next. And in a way, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of story progresses now that we know that Nagash isn't around at the moment after the events of Teclis. We've got here Belladama Volga, the first of the Varkos. Made an interesting point in the video that if you look there, you can kind of see wolf and paws. So there we go. Apparently she's kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes. And then we've got some updated dire wolves, which look absolutely amazing. Really like the look of these. I like how you can see that, you know, the muscle structure there. Those eyes look really cool. We've got a little bird eating the kind of flesh of the dire wolf as well. Yeah, just generally really impressed with those models. They look great. And yeah, it has made me want to collect a Soulblight Gravelord army. I'm really impressed with the models. Interestingly though, it did say quite a number of times that is the full range of the models. So I'm guessing that means that there won't be any kind of specific terrain pieces, or also endless spells for Soulblight Gravelords, or at least not at the moment. I know there's kind of lots that are death themed, so, you know, it's not like they're kind of missing out on that aspect. And of course they've got the mausoleum, is it the Sigmar, right, mausoleum? The kind of graveyard piece, which would obviously be really befitting for the army. It'll be interesting to see if they kind of have the gravesite markers still, or how they will kind of do summoning mechanics. But yeah, apparently this comes out in May, so really looking forward to seeing how that will perform on the tabletop. It definitely looks brilliant in the photographs, so yeah, looking forward to exploring that. They announced the game, which we'll kind of gloss over there, and then they had the interview about Kragnos and how, you know, how that will kind of shape up to be in the future. And also the kind of how the events of the Broken Realms, and it was to do with Broken Realms, Kragnos being the kind of lord of earthquakes, the realms will quake, it will break. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that kind of ends with the series, and I imagine lead on to Saturday's announcement of the 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar. So there we go, that was the day 1 of the Age of Sigmar Warhammer Fest, and I would love to get your opinions. What did you think of it? Was it what you expected? What do you think of the new models? And will you be picking any of them up as well? Thank you so much for joining me. Really looking forward to talking with you all in the comments below. And I hope you're looking forward to Saturday as well. No idea what it will be yet, but as I said, we might be seeing the next edition of Age of Sigmar. So thanks once again. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, if you could do so please, and if you could drop a like too, that would be fantastic. Thanks very much, and we'll speak soon. Bye bye.